Here we are with Wheelock chapter 32. In many of these last chapters in Wheelock's book, we're simply going to get a lot of different little things that we need to learn, and today is one of those weeks. So several small items. So first, adverbs. Many adverbs are formed just like in English by taking an adjective and then adding an adverb suffix to it. So in English, we do that by taking the adjective beautiful and then we add ly to get beautifully. Likewise in Latin, with first and second declension nouns, we just drop the ending and we add a. So pulcher means beautiful, pulchre means beautifully, liber means free, libre means freely. Liber, I should say. Liber means free. Libre. It's a long I there. For third declension adjectives, we're going to add a different ending. We're going to add iter to the stem, and recall that for the third declension, to find the stem, you need to look at the genitive form and drop the is. And so fortis, the genitive is also fortis. And so I drop off the is, and I have just fort, and then I add iter. So I have fortiter, means bravely. And if my genitive stem already ends in a t, then I'm just going to add er. So then I'll have sapienter, means wisely. So you can look those over on page 264 and 265, but it's really just recognizing them when you see them. The comparative and superlative degrees of adjectives. To form the comparative, you simply use the neuter accusative singular form of the comparative adjective, and so that ends in ius. And so the adjective diligens, but now we get diligentius, means more diligently. And the superlative, the superlative is easy to form because the superlative adjective is simply a first or second declension adjective. And so we're going to replace its ending with a. And so eucundissime means most pleasantly. And so we could do that with, and so also maximus, greatest. If I replace that us with maxim, I get maxime, which means most greatly, or to the greatest extent. So again, just really to recognize those. Perhaps on a quiz you might be asked to form the superlative adverb, but again, that's easy to form. You just drop the us or the a and replace it with this long a sound. So maxime, maximus, maxime. And then the quam, again, we have these special usages of the word quam. But again, they're just like with the adjective. So these are things we already know. Hic puer calarius concurrit quam illa. This is the comparative use of quam. So hic puer, this boy, calarius, more quickly. So there again is our, the adjective is keller. And so the comparative adjective is calarius. And then that comparative form can be used also as the comparative adverb. So more quickly. So this boy more quickly runs. Concurrit means runs. So this boy runs more quickly. Quam illa. When quam is followed by, is used with a comparative like this and it's followed by a noun, it just means than that boy. Understood. Likewise, when we had quam plus a superlative adjective, it meant as much as possible. So likewise, when we have quam plus a superlative adverb, it just means as whatever as possible. So here it's that girl runs, concurrit, runs, quam calerime, as quickly as possible, as quickly as can be. Okay. On page 265 and 266, you just have a long list This is essentially your part of your vocabulary for the week of irregular comparative and superlative adjectives. So you'll just want to simply make a list of those and use them on, make flashcards of them so you can study them. And then again, I said this chapter is just kind of one oddball thing after another. We now get a set of irregular verbs, wolo, nolo, and malo. Wolo means I want or I wish. Nolo means I do not wish. And malo means I would rather. I would rather have. I prefer. So mostly, as you can see here or in your book, they're very regular. Now, wolo, wis, wolt, wolomus, woltus, wolent. That's kind of an odd form. And then likewise, you can see that sometimes the known and nolo is brought together with the word, and sometimes it's known wis. Known wolt instead of nolt, I guess you might expect. So in your book on page 266 and 267, the forms that are strange are highlighted for you in bold, and so you can make note of those. Again, mostly you'll be able to recognize these fairly easily, but review them, and you might want to especially make flashcards of the present, all the present tense forms. There's a great bit of irregularity in there, and then perhaps the imperatives of nolo, which basically mean don't. And so you have an example here on page 267 of how to use these forms of nolo. So noli manera, do not remain. So literally, do not wish to remain just becomes, that's just how they say in Latin, don't stay. Don't remain, don't stay here. Or nolita discedera means don't leave, do not wish to leave. There's a famous English poem from the Middle Ages that starts, noli me tangere, do not touch me, do not wish to touch me. Okay, and then the last little item from this chapter of strange items put together is just this, essentially just this word, dumodo, just means provided that. And then it can also be used with dummodo ne, which means provided that not. And basically you just need to know that this word is followed by the subjunctive. And that's all there is to it. So you can read the full explanation there on page 267 and 268, but really it's simply a vocabulary word this week. Dumodo means provided, and it's followed by the subjunctive. And when it's used in that way, we call that a proviso clause. It's simply another kind of dependent clause introduced by this word. For your translations for this chapter, you're going to work on numbers 4 and 10 from page 269. In preparing for the quiz over this chapter, it's just a lot of little things. I'm not going to quiz you. Again, if it's about forms, it'll be very easy. I might give you pulcher, and then I might say type in the adverbial form of pulcher. So you should be able to know that you replace the ending with this a. Likewise, when it comes to the comparative or superlative of adverbs, I might just tell you, how do you form, if you have maximus, how do you turn that into an adverb? Well, I change it to maxime. Note the special uses of quam. Again, you've essentially already learned those. And then review, look over all these strange forms for volo, nolo, and malo, especially the present tense. And then you'll be pretty good for the quiz. And so after you've studied, after you've made your cards, move on to your translations, correct your translations, and then you should be ready for a quiz over this chapter.